All right, so I think we've got our Hangout working now. Jen, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Okay. We're going to turn up the volume. So would you mind answering the same question as well? So how or why did you decide to live and work abroad? And what did you do while you were there?
Sure. So I think earlier somebody said I was in Japan, which I wasn't. I was in South Korea. I decided...
Hold on 1 second. The sound isn't working very well.
Oh, you have to plug this into your headphones.
Okay.
That should be.
Right. Where is it?
There we go.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think earlier somebody said that I was in Japan. I actually wasn't. Beautiful country, but I actually lived in South Korea for 3 years. I decided to go abroad. I was 24. I was working for the William Morris agency, it's a talent agency at the time. I was booking like music acts and touring and doing all that kind of stuff, and I just didn't want to do it anymore, so I looked for jobs, and it's actually pretty easy. You look for a job abroad like you would look for a job anywhere else. You find job boards, you find people that have the jobs you want. You just start doing your research, books and websites and anything you can find to tell you about what you're looking for. And then you have to look into the visa process and how to do it and what you need and things like that. So I started looking for a job around October, and I was hoping to leave following summer. So I gave myself about 6 months to figure it out. And I started applying for jobs through agencies. There are agencies there that if you want to teach English, at least it's an easy way to do it. I chose South Korea because they paid the most out of all the countries in the world, including South America, other Asian countries, even Europe. South Korea pays the most. At the time, and roughly now, they still pay about $2,000 a month, and you get free room and board, a free round-trip airfare, health insurance, a bonus, retirement, and then you can work part-time too. So it's pretty amazing, actually. And I signed up for a 1-year contract, which is pretty standard, and I loved it so much I stayed for 3 and worked for a couple different schools in a couple different cities around the country. So yeah, I really loved it. I think that's all the part of the question, right?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That was awesome. So now we'll go to Andrea and ask you the same question. How or why did you decide to live and work abroad, and what are you doing now?
Okay, I hope you guys can hear me okay. Seems like maybe... Okay. Currently I'm working at Fox International Channels in Rome, Italy. I'm the Global Marketing Manager of the Global Marketing Department. Why did I go abroad? Well, it was really kind of for a love of my own that I had for the country of Italy. It's also my heritage. So following graduation at SU, I took a year to kind of spend some time studying the language, and I got an internship in Rome. And that's when everything just kind of fell into place after I started the internship. Then I returned back to the United States, and I was working in Los Angeles for about 3 years. And during that first year that I spent in Rome, I actually ended up meeting my future husband. So that was the main reason why I ended up really coming back in a semi-permanent fashion, which was 4 years. No, it was 6 years ago. Sorry, I've been at Fox here for 4 years now. But yeah, my original idea was to just go abroad after graduation to really intensify. I wanted to be fluent in Italian. I had studied it during college. So my goal was to really gain fluency and get some work experience. In the meantime, I ended up meeting my husband. And so that's how that turned out. I ended up being the one, I guess, to make the sacrifice to really move my life, my adult life, to another country 6 years ago. So yeah, that's the main story. We can get into details later, I guess. But
Great, thank you. All right, so we did get to hear a little bit about some of Chris's challenges abroad. So I wanted to ask you guys, Andrea and Jen, what challenges have you faced either finding the position or while you were abroad? Jen, would you mind going first?
Sure. Part of the reason why you want to go abroad is to seek out those challenges, to be honest, right? Like, a friend of mine told me before I went that your brain turns into a sponge, and from the minute you land, everything you know is different. So you have to relearn how to do everything, and that's part of the fun. So honestly, coming home was the bigger challenge after 3 years because everything was so normal. I didn't like it. I liked the challenge of the day to day. I mean, at least with South Korea, I didn't speak the language at all. I learned how to read and write it just so I could get around with street signs and stuff, but I didn't really need to. I wish I had taken a class on how to learn the language, but not necessary, at least there. So I would say the language was a minimal challenge, but not too much. The bigger challenge was, you have these preconceived notions of what professionalism means to you, but in a different country working for a different international company, they have different understanding of what's professional and what's expected, and there's rules of respect and respect your elders and don't question people, and you just have to go in and do your job sometimes. So that was always a challenge where I was under the impression from my previous professional world that you work together with your leaders, you come together and you can question authority sometimes, but in South Korea you really can't. And I watched people get fired because they were questioning too much. And yeah, I would say that the visa process is sometimes challenging when you don't speak the language and you have to talk to immigration and figure all that stuff out. Always helpful to get to know the locals so they can be your translators if you don't speak it. So yeah, but otherwise, I mean, day-to-day mini challenges is part of the fun.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. You go to learn more and to explore and to be out of your comfort zone, right? So thank you. Andrea, how about you? What challenges have you faced while you've been there, or how did you find your position? If you had any challenges with that.
Listen, if anyone's going to be very honest with you guys, it's going to be me. I think that, like what Jen was saying, everything that she said I agree with. I think it's absolutely a growth experience. It's an enriching kind of experience that you will never get at home. When you do land, you enter a new world and where you're responsible for everything that's happening. You have to figure it all out. It's like starting over again completely. To not even, I mean, in Jen's case, she dealt with probably more culture shock than I did being in Italy, but I can speak from an Italian perspective. The bureaucracy was terrible, and it continues to be on a daily basis, practically. But those are things that you have to learn to navigate depending on the country that you're in and the culture that you've chosen to be a part of. Those aren't things that you figure out in a week. I mean, they're things that through small interactions and big interactions you learn day by day. And that's part of the fun of it all, really. I mean, traveling is what makes you come home with an absolutely new perspective on yourself, on your life, on our country. I mean, it continues to happen to me even every time I come home now. And, I mean, there were just a number of challenges that I guess you really have to know if you really want it, because it will be challenging. Just getting to deal with the legal aspect of it and all of the customs and everything is tiring in itself, but then there's also the day-to-day feelings of, kind of feeling like the outsider, being the person who's left out of the joke, or the language barrier in the beginning is a big, hurdle to jump over. But I think it's important to be that kind of person that embraces it and is looking for that, because if you feel offended by it or if you feel insulted and upset by it, you have to kind of rethink why you're doing it, because it takes a certain person to really open themselves up to that kind of. It makes you feel almost humiliated, I guess, like you're not understanding what's going on. You're kind of you're not part of the inside joke, I guess. Sometimes in the beginning it was very much that way, but with time that all goes away, and I think you surprise yourself at how adaptable you can be. And how amazing that is, really. I mean, when you get close to people. And I think you'll find, I mean, in any country of the world, most countries, are very welcoming of Americans, because there is a special affinity for the American culture, at least from a European perspective, an Italian perspective. They're kind of in love with America. I mean, they have this certain romanticized idea of our culture, everything about it. I mean, I was in the mall the other day, and there's a KFC opening, which to me is ridiculous, but they think that's great. I mean, they find it really cool, that a KFC, wow, it's like being in the Wild West of the United States, and it's just that those are interesting things that you figure out while you're here. On the job aspect, I was not transferred through my company. I did work for Fox in Los Angeles, but when I left Los Angeles, I completely left. I didn't have any, I mean, I was starting to make ties because one thing that I did do from the United States was get in contact with any possible person I could who was working in Italy or knew anyone who was working in Italy, wrote to them, talked to them as much as possible. I was coming every now and then to Italy to visit my boyfriend at the time. So when I was here, I was making meetings with people, just talking to anyone and everyone I could. But in Italy, the situation was that if you didn't have a visa to work or a citizenship, no one wanted to talk to you. Because, I mean, unfortunately, it just wasn't an option in a company like this one, and I knew I wanted to try to get into this company. So in the end, you know, after I made the move here, I ended up doing some other freelance work in the beginning because I was waiting for my dual citizenship to go through. And it was really cool work and everything, but it wasn't giving me the kind of stability that I would hope for. So I kept checking the website, kept seeing if there were any opportunities coming up at Fox here. I had made contact with people, you know, people knew I was looking. When an opportunity came up, it was not in marketing, had been my background. It was in scheduling, which is something that's kind of, you know, I mean, it's a tough job. It's a very manual kind of work that was not really of interest to me. But when I saw that position open up, because they are few and far between, especially these days in Italy, I was really fast to jump on it. And I ended up taking it way beyond my skill, like way under my skill level, and also very beneath my pay scale. And, you know, I did it anyway because I knew that I wanted to be here in this company, and I figured out that I was to get in, and then I was going to make my way up and figure it out from there. Thankfully, that's what happened. I can say that 4 years later, I finally got back to where I guess I should have been. But it was a lot of sacrifice, and I think that that's another thing. I mean, you can't come abroad necessarily expecting to find what you would find in the United States. So that's an important thing, I think, to have your priorities, and you have to be realistic about what you're going to be doing. These kind of opportunities don't come around that often, and so you have to be willing to just throw yourself out there, I think, and do whatever you can to start making the steps necessary to reach the goal that you're looking for.
Thank you, Andrea. That was very insightful. It's definitely a process. So I'm guessing that a lot of the students have questions now, specific questions for some of you, for the panelists. So I was hoping to open it up to the students. So again, we have Chris, Jen, who is in South Korea, and we have Andrea, who's in Rome. What questions do you have? Yes.
I guess for any of you, when you did end up moving over, did you first start out with a roommate and make that arrangement prior to moving, or did you go and find a house alone, or what was your living situation?
Can you guys hear?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she asked about living situations, right?
Yes.
I can take that first. I was doing my research beforehand, and with the school that I signed up with, they provided housing. So when I got there, they put me in a hotel for a week while the other person moved out. And then once that person left and we finished up the training and everything, I moved into that apartment. So I didn't have to worry about it. It was a really nice place. The thing that you have to do is kind of suspend your want to live in a certain place in that situation, because they just give you what they want. So I got lucky with a really great apartment, but the other people on my staff did not have really great apartments, and my boyfriend at the time was in a different place, and his apartment had mold, so he was dealing with a little bit more unhappiness with his place than I was. I had a balcony, a huge place, it was great, so kind of the luck of the draw, and you just have to go with the flow when you get in those situations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, when I first came over, I ended up coming over with kind of a program that was it was a language intensive and also internship program, and they handled the housing in the beginning. I remember the first 3 months. But then when I figured out that I wanted to stick around for a while, I ended up getting hired at my internship, and that's when I just, you know, you got to utilize the local newspapers, the local ads, and throw yourself out there, just like Craigslist in the United States. It exists pretty much everywhere. And you just have to refer to the local help for that. And now with the internet, I feel like these days it's so much easier even than when I did it 10 years ago. It was a whole different story. So there's a lot of resources there, and you just have to research those. But you have to be on the soil to be able to move around and get that done. So.
Yeah, after my contract was over my first year, I then looked for different places to live that I wanted to move into different places. So once you're there, it's a lot easier, and you use the same methods you would in any city, as Andrea was saying.
Great, thank you guys. And what about you, Chris? Did you have any experiences with that, finding a place to live abroad?
No, all 3 times it was taken care of ahead of time, which particularly in Malaysia was great. I would not know what to do. So.
Right. So if you're in a program, typically you will have something set up for you. What other questions do you all have? Okay, so we'll start over here and then we'll come to you. Go ahead.
Was it difficult to find friends or like to build like that social group that you would get along with and things like that, or was it just like you're on your own and you kind of have to like be alone for a while?
I can take this one, actually. The moment I landed, actually, can we mute? I can't hear myself.
What's that?
I keep hearing the echo. Can you mute?
Okay. Oh, mute. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So when I got there, it was kind of an awful situation. I've been traveling for 35 hours. I got there really late at night, and I thought I was actually living a lot closer to the city of Seoul than I was. And I got put into a spare bedroom of this Australian guy for the first night, and it was August, and I was living across the street from a dump, and everything smelled bad. And my first thought was, oh my God, what am I doing here? How did I get myself in this situation? I don't know anybody. This is crazy. And then the next night, I had a dinner with my staff. They took me to like the local bar to meet all the expats that kind of go out on Friday nights. And I remember someone yelling at me around 1 a.m., this British guy who was like, this is going to be the greatest experience of your life. You don't understand how amazing this is. And I'm like, why is this British man yelling at me? He was on his way out of his contract. And he's now one of my best friends in the world. And he lives in London. And we see each other a couple times a year, basically. And it's this family. At least in my experience, I was immediately thrown into a situation with people who understand it. And about 30 people now are still some of my best friends around the world, and I travel around to English-speaking countries visiting them. So you just have to be really open to it, and everyone else who's there has gone through the same experience you have, so usually they're pretty welcoming. The traveling community is a phenomenal community to get into, and you'll meet people for the rest of your life that are just automatic friends.
Thank you, Jen. That was fantastic. Andrea, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah,
about
again,
finding friends?
Sure, I concur with Jen. I think that once you do an experience like this, the people that you meet you end up having a really great bond with because you are sharing a very unique experience. But I think on a practical level, I can say that it's probably better to travel with a friend if you can in the beginning. That was what I did, for example. I came for that program to Rome with my best friend after we graduated from SU. So you always have that kind of person with you that you can count on while you're getting out there and getting to know people. If you come under the umbrella of some kind of program or school or something like that, I think it's probably better because you do get that kind of support system at least in the beginning while you're getting your confidence up and while you're getting your footing. But afterward, then you realize what's going on and you start to make friends. And I would say, to add on to Jen, to what she was saying, is that it's important for you to get out there, though, with the locals. One thing I have a pet peeve about are the Americans that come to Rome and they act like they're in college and they don't talk to anyone else and they roam the streets and they get drunk and they yell and act like fools. And that's what the Italians think of Americans because of all of this. I mean, I've been here for so long and I've seen it happen so many times. It's like a broken record. It's the same scene over and over again. So you can't blame them for having that kind of, generalization about us. They have nothing really, they just don't think very highly of American girls because, I mean, you can't help it. The way they act in public is ridiculous because they're on vacation and they think, oh, who cares? No one knows me here, you know. It's just not the way that I personally ever have felt that studying abroad was supposed to be. And I think that if you come because you want to know about the culture, you need to get involved in the culture. You need to speak to locals. You need to really hang out. You don't want to be in an American bubble in another country because you're not going to have the experience that you're looking to have. And you can't let friends drag you into that either, because some people prefer to feel in their comfort zone even when they're somewhere away from home. That's okay to a certain point, but it cannot take over your entire time. Otherwise, you're really just wasting your money and your time.
Great points, thank you. Chris, what about you?
So I had a different set of thoughts about it. So one big issue for me at work and in the community, I couldn't be friends with women. I couldn't speak to women. So I mean, I'm walking along the halls in the school, and women would literally turn their backs to me and face the wall. Now it's not, you know, in their culture, that's not a sign of disrespect. That's what you have to do. I'm, you know, a non-Muslim male. That's what has to happen. But to me, it was very shocking. And that there were days when that would happen. Like, I've never felt so alone in my life. I had one Malay friend. He was an economics teacher at the school. We're still in touch. He's fantastic. I played badminton with him and his team for the year. And we go out pretty much every night to the local food stand and hang out and watch reruns of WWF on the television and hang out, and it was great. He had me over to his house for holidays, and we would go, you know, take day trips and whatnot together with his family and stuff. So those things organically happen. We do, but it was, you know, the exception for me. He was the one friend I had, Malay friend. Our group, like I said, was 75, so it was large, and it afforded us the opportunity to have travel mates and stuff like that. I lived next door to another person in the program, but she was a female, and we were the only two people in the same village that were, you know, male and female, and so that was a whole other set of cultural things. That we didn't live together, but we lived close enough to each other that it was an issue. So yeah, social life was tough. It was very tough. You know, I did not have a wonderful bar full of expats waiting for me after my 36-hour flight to Kuala Lumpur. I had a hotel that didn't have a room ready, and it was sweaty and gross, and we were all sad. So it's tough. It really is. But again, it depends. It's a luck of the draw. I should preface my thing too. The whole 75 of us, maybe 70, had a great time. How we want to do. You know, my experience was atypical. So keep that in mind as I type off, obviously.
Thank you. Okay, and then we had a question over here. Yes.
I have a question for Jen because I'm interested in working in South Korea, and I was wondering what sort of resources that you that I could, websites or anything that I could go to specifically for working in South Korea.
Sure. So Dave's ESL Cafe is a website that you can use. It looks awful. It's so outdated, but the information on it is really good, and the jobs that are on it are also really good. The other one is Work and Play, like work letter N play .co.kr. And that is a really up-to-date and modern website that most people use to find jobs. And then I would say on both of those things, put your resume on those websites, like an actual resume of anything, up-to-date internships. They don't have to be crazy. They're just looking to make sure that you're a native English speaker and that you have a college degree. That's important. You don't need a TFL, TEFL, TEFL degree or anything for Korea. You just have to make sure you have a clean criminal background and that you speak English and you have a college degree. That's really the only requirements. And those two websites alone should help you at least start your research, and then just Google like expat blogs and get an idea of what life is like. It's hard. I will say that living there is hard, but the more research you do of people's experiences and just reading what they're writing about how they live, the better idea you'll get for when you go.
Great, thank you. And I'll make sure to send those out I'm going to send out a list of resources, so I'll put that on the list for you guys. Okay, what other questions do we have? Yes.
This is hardly to anyone, but did you guys have any financial struggles moving to the new country or just like in process? I think a lot of us are graduating, having maybe part-time jobs and stuff, trying to like build up to savings. Or have any financial struggles? I know that Andrea said she was in an internship program. I assume that the pay wasn't very well. Like, how was that for you guys and trying to adjust and trying to adapt to the
Did you guys hear that?
I got part of it.
Okay. What financial struggles did you have when you were first moving there? A lot of students are going to be interested in going right after graduation, so how do you prepare for that, and how do you deal with any financial related issues? Or how can you prepare?
I'll let Jen.
Okay, I can say it, yeah. I wouldn't recommend this to anyone. I went with $500 to my name. They recommend when you go that your first month you shouldn't expect your first paycheck because they're doing all the paperwork and it takes about a month to get your paycheck. And we were paid monthly, so we got all of our lump sum at once. And you set up your bank account and do all of your exchange with the American into whatever currency you're going to. I went with $500 and it was fine. Like I said, they pay for the round trip airfare, so they took care of that before I even went. And then you just at least understand the cost of living. So Korea is actually really cheap to live in. You could get an entire meal for anywhere between $5 to $10. My gym was like 30 or 50 bucks a month, and my electric bill was like $16 a month. Like, it's really, really cost effective, and they were paying for my rent. So as long as those major things are taken care of when you first get there, it wasn't an issue. It was a challenge to live frugally the first month because you want to do everything and go where, but they recommend you go with at least $1,000, and I would say that's probably a safe amount to go to Korea with.
Anyone else? Andrea or Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. I think it's important to know where you're going, and in this case, Korea is different than coming to Europe because there's the euro, and it's very, very expensive. It's been going down recently, but it's been really, really high the whole time we've been here. That's definitely a consideration, and not to be taken lightly. In my case, I graduated a semester early, and I was able to save some money before coming. I was working, and saving money, so that was definitely necessary, unless you have some help or you're going, again, as a student, maybe you want to do your master's and, you're going to just get loans, and I don't know. I mean, it's something that you definitely have to consider because you can't count on, necessarily having the income that you want right away.
To add on to that, everyone, at least in Asia, like Japan or Korea or even China to some extent, they choose those places specifically to go and pay off student loan debt. That is the story that you'll come across with every traveler. I'm there to save money. Teaching English is usually not everyone's career goal, and it definitely wasn't mine. It helped me get the job I have now, which is working for a British agency, but it wasn't a life goal. It was really just to pay off credit card debt and student loan debt. So you definitely wouldn't choose Europe for that goal. You would choose Asia to save money.
Definitely.
Flights paid for and the rent's paid for, you're in good shape. But, I went to London my freshman year of college, so my Cold Stone Creamery money from high school didn't last all that long when the pound was over $2 to 1 pound. So all these things that have been said, be thoughtful about. And my other tip that I would say is never let your bank account go under how much money you need for a one-way ticket. Don't go with $500. You don't have any idea. I mean, it's not worked out, but you have no idea what's going to happen. You have no idea what's going to happen back here. You all have different family situations, interests, all that. Never end up in a spot where you need to get home and you can't. And talk to family and friends and stuff too. whatever arrangements you need for that to happen, but I would recommend that and be thoughtful with that.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left. What other questions do you have? Yes.
I guess this is geared towards all of you. How did you navigate the visa process?
The visa process, okay. I think Andrea did talk a little bit about that and how difficult that was. What about you, Chris and Jen, or Andrea, if you have anything to add in?
I'm sorry, I missed that last question. My computer's going crazy here.
Sorry.
What was that?
The question was, how do you navigate the visa process?
Very careful. It's a pain. It's really a big pain. I mean, you need to study the U.S. What is it? USVisa.gov. I forget what it is, but just you need to read that, you know, and understand it. And if you really get desperate, there are some services that can help you. Some lawyers and etc., immigration attorneys, but hopefully by word of mouth and with other people you can arrive to someone who can give you some good advice without having to pay for it. That would be the ideal thing. But yeah, usually, I mean, here's the thing. I came here again and I was, you know, I had an interesting situation and I was able to get my dual citizenship through my family because in Italy that's how you're allowed to have it. So that was something that obviously helped a lot. Once I had dual citizenship, it was all taken care of from there. But if you don't have that kind of luxury, I really couldn't give much of an advice about the actual visa, the actual situation. You just have to follow it, and I think you have to be sponsored by the person who wants to give you work. So you would have to come to the country you're looking to work in, make that connection, find the job, and then get them to sponsor you for the visa, if I'm not mistaken.
My contract was with a Malaysian government agency, so they just slapped a visa in there when I got there. I didn't do enough. So saved me colossal headaches.
Okay,
It's a lot
go ahead.
to be sponsored by someone ahead of time and to actually come there and then. I mean, if you can make that happen, at least to get started, that's definitely.
That's how you get the visa before you can get on the plane.
Good. So if you go with a program, that should help, definitely, to help you get your visa. Otherwise, you know, you can always talk to the Fletcher Center, or ask us for help, and we'll try to refer you to the right people. What other questions? Yes.
All right, Andrea, you're actually in the exact position that I would like to be in a few years. I'm applying for Fox right now. Italy is one of my favorite countries in the world. I love Rome. Spent a long time there. What's the best way to end up where you are? What's the short? How do you recommend going about it?
You know, I mean, I understand the romanticism of it all, and I don't want to say that it's not amazing being here, and it is. But it's important. I want to be realistic, guys. I ended up doing it really the hard way, and I'm not saying that it can't be done, but it took a long time for me to get where I am right now, and it was a long, hard road. And it can be done, I think. Listen, I mean, you already have someone on the inside, so maybe it'll be a little bit easier. No, I mean, I'd be willing to help, of course, but it's very difficult. You would have to be here, first of all. Is your goal to be in Italy or to be at Fox? What's the goal?
Well, short term be at Fox, long term be in Italy.
Okay, the other road here that we could talk about, if you're willing to wait a little bit longer and not come right after graduation, there's the option of getting into a company that you want to be in, finding your way into the international or global department, because every major media company has one these days, obviously, and then being transferred to the country that you're looking to be transferred to. That's a long, hard road, too. You have to find, it'll take some time to navigate, but that would be the easier way to do it. And the way that I would definitely, that's my suggestion. It would be what I would say to do. If you want to come a corporate way, you want to try to do it from the United States and be transferred over, because they'll handle the visa, they'll give you housing for a few months, They'll give you everything you need, and you come, they'll pay for your flights. It's the thing about working for an international company and being in the international department is that you kind of have to be ready for them to tell you, okay, we need you here, and you have to be willing to go. Even in my case, there's actually a chance that I could be transferred pretty soon. So it's a reality you have to deal with, but if you're okay with that, that's a plus. I mean, then you welcome it, and I would say to try, get to where you need to be in the United States, make the connections, and then come over. Coming to Italy just out of nowhere and trying to work at Fox I don't recommend it, honestly. I really don't. I'm doing it, but I don't recommend it because it's so hard. The bureaucracy is just terrible. Unless you have access to dual citizenship like I did. I don't think you do. If you don't,
No.
well, I mean, that's a big issue. I mean, you could come and get started and see if. See, the thing is, Fox won't even hire you if you don't have that. If you don't have a visa and you don't have the ability to work already, they're not going to do that for you if they don't know who you are. You know what I'm saying? That's something they do only for people who they know and who are being transferred, for example. The company will take care of that. So that's why my suggestion would be to try to get in on the inside in the United States in the right department.
I echo that as well. Like, I currently work for a British company. They're based out of London, and I've been to the London office. They're growing their U.S. business right now, so that I started about a year ago. And if you can find companies that are looking to hire within the U.S., you build up your credit there, then you have the opportunity to move within that organization everywhere. And like Andrea said, you really have to be open to doing it at a moment's notice. When these companies decide they need someone in a certain place and they want you to do it, they want you to go right then and there. And that's the story with almost all of my friends who work for various European companies or major international companies as well. You just have to be open to that opportunity.
Right. I mean, just to give you guys a little bit of description, because I know it's hard to kind of understand, but the way that these companies are set up is that, they'll have this global team. Maybe, for example, my team in Rome is part of a global network of marketing, the marketing team for Fox, that is distributed between Los Angeles, Washington, Rome, Buenos Aires, and London. So we're all over the place. And then all of a sudden, maybe you get a new chief marketing officer who decides that they don't want everyone spread all over the world. They want everyone, I'm saying this because actually it's a possibility in my own.
Oh, did she freeze?
Try typing the message to her. Still.
I think she froze.
Okay. Oh, there she is.
Oh, now your mic's.
Uh-oh.
Technical difficulty.
Can you hear us? Your mic is frozen, I think.
Oh, I didn't do anything.
I hear you now.
Oh, now we can hear you. Okay.
Okay.
So you cut out for a minute.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know where I left off, but.
Talking about the CFO and how it might change.
Yeah, if you have a boss who just decides all of a sudden that she wants all the marketing people in Los Angeles and all the design people in Buenos Aires, for example, everyone else has to move, and that's all there is to it. Or either that or you have to change companies. So, I mean, that's part of what working in an international team is about these days.
All right, so we are running out of time, and I just want to thank you all for coming, and I really, really want to thank our panelists, Andrea, Jen, and Chris. Can we give them a round of applause? So I'm going to send out the resources for you all, and I will check in with each of the panelists to see if they can contact you, or you can contact them, rather, things like that. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Good luck.
Thank you so much.